This is close enough. Stop here, Rufus.
Whoa! Whoa up there, Prince. Back, lady.
Well, Harry, there's the ship ready to sail.
Yes, Anne. We sail with the flood tide in an hour. I'd better see to getting my luggage aboard. You, Rufus.
Yes, Mr. Harry?
You and Augustus take my trunks aboard the ship and stow them in my cabin. Jump to it now.
Yes, sir.
Must you go, Harry? President Madison has offered you a commission here as a major general to fight against the English.
It's been a long time since I was a soldier, my dear. I am old and sick, and all I want for now is the warm breeze of the Barbados to soothe my aching body.
But, Father, you're Light Horse Harry Lee, hero of the War of Independence. You can still command men.
Carter, my son, I'm barely able to command myself.
Papa, I don't want you to go.
Come here, Robert Edward, and let Papa hold you for a few minutes. Oh, there. Up on my shoulders to look at the whole world, my little soldier.
I will be a soldier, Papa, just like you.
Hi, boys and girls, and welcome. This is Aunt Carol.
And I'm Uncle Dan. Hello, everyone. We're surely glad you've joined us.
Yes, we are, because today we begin the first in a series of 4 stories about little Robert, who wanted to grow up to be a soldier just like his papa. We know him better as the very famous General Robert E. Lee, commander of the Confederate Army in the Civil War.
General Lee's fame rests on his military achievements in the face of overwhelming odds and on his outstanding personal character.
He was truly a man of honor who won the admiration and respect of Northerners as well as Southerners to become one of the most beloved figures in American history.
Well, Aunt Carol, I'm ready to hear how it all happened, so let's get started.
All right, Uncle Dan. Our story for today is called Robert E. Lee, Hero of the South. Robert E. Lee's father, the Revolutionary War hero Light Horse Harry, was better at leading cavalry than making investments. Sick and in debt, he would wander the Caribbean for the next 5 years, seeking to restore both his health and his wealth, the only contact with home being an occasional letter. He died in 1818 without ever seeing his family again. Left with 5 children and a small income, Ann Lee squeezed every dollar until it screamed. She soon lost her health and often found it almost impossible even to get out of bed. Robert became her nurse and constant companion. While other teenage boys looked for fun after school, Robert E. Lee hurried home to take his mother for her daily carriage ride so she could breathe some fresh air. By careful management, Anne was able to send her oldest son, Carter, to Harvard. Her second son, Smith, received a naval commission. But by the time Robert reached college age, there was simply no more money. For the Lees, with their influential connections, there was only one answer to the problem, and the wheels were set in motion. So on a warm June morning in 1825, Robert Edward Lee stepped aboard the river steamer Richmond in New York City for the 50-mile trip up the Hudson River to West Point. Robert, 18 years old at the time, leaned against the rail and watched the Palisades slip by.
The Hudson is beautiful, is it not, sir?
It is indeed, sir. It is not unlike the Potomac, with lawns running right to the water's edge and grand mansions rising on the hills.
I'm Joseph E. Johnston from Farmville, Virginia.
Honored to meet you. I'm right.
I know who you are. Everybody in Virginia knows the Lees and the cousins, the Carters. I'm pleased to meet you, Robert Lee.
Are you going to the point, Joseph?
Yes, I am. My appointment came through last month late, and it was a flurry getting ready, I can tell you.
Your pardon, young sirs, but we'll be standing off West Point in about a half hour. Better get your gear ready to go ashore.
Young ladies have had enough close order drill for this morning, but I'll expect you out here bright and early tomorrow morning. Now go to your breakfast and report to your classes by 8 o'clock. Dismissed!
That drill master is a monster. When I applied for the point, I had no idea we'd be marching around this muddy field at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Ah, Joseph, my boy, it's good for the Constitution. What bothers me more than close order drill is the hazing by the upperclassmen.
Well, only 4 more years of this torture, Robert, and we'll be second lieutenants.
4 more years?
But Robert was very successful at the point, placing consistently among the top 2 or 3 in his class and establishing an almost unheard of record of receiving not a single demerit. At the end of his 3rd year, he was named adjutant of the Corps, which made him the most prestigious cadet at the academy. In 1829, he graduated with high honors and the temporary rank of 2nd lieutenant. But the happy occasion was dimmed by sad news.
Graduation at last. Congratulations, 2nd Lieutenant Lee.
And the same to you, 2nd Lieutenant Johnston.
Well, Robert, as a distinguished cadet, you can choose any branch of the service you wish. What'll it be?
I'm going into the engineers. And you, Joseph?
I will be one of the foot-slogging infantry, I'm afraid. Will you report directly to your new post?
No. I've received word that my mother is very sick. So I'll go home for a while before I report for duty. Mother, are you sleeping?
Robert, is that you? Come here, my son, and let me look at you. Oh, how handsome you look in your gray and white uniform.
Mother, you mustn't talk. You must rest.
I'll have eternity to rest, my son. I know that I'm dying.
Mother, not so.
Hush, Robert. I don't fear death.
Sleep. I'll come back in a few hours. Sleep. The funeral was nice. Don't you think, Mildred?
It was sad, Robert. Mother had such a disappointing life. Well, what will you do now, brother?
Well, there are a few more details of Mother's estate that I must see to.
Will you be visiting Arlington again before you go to your military assignment?
Perhaps I shall, little sister. Why, you little minx! What are you implying?
Well, it seems to me that you are very much interested in Mary Ann Custis, and she in you.
Why, we're just very good friends, Mary Ann and I.
Oh, of course, Robert. Just very good friends.
Well, come in, Robert, and sit down. I understand you have something you want to ask me.
Yes, sir. As you probably know, your daughter and I have become very close.
Oh, it has not escaped my attention.
Well, sir, that friendship has blossomed into something, much stronger.
Well, yes. Yes, please go on.
Mr. Custis, Mary Ann and I are in love and we want to be married. There, I've said it.
Tell me, how do you propose to support my daughter on a second lieutenant's pay of $25 a month?
Sir, I know you are a very wealthy man, and Mary Ann has lived a life of luxury. I know I can't give her the style of life that she's used to, but we love each other. We'll make out somehow.
Ah, yeah, the confidence of youth. Well, young man, Mrs. Custis looks with favor on this match. Oh, don't look so surprised. We have seen it coming. So it seems that I also must give my consent if I'm to have any peace in this house. When do you plan to marry?
It will be some time, sir. I'm ordered to Georgia to work on coastal fortifications. My next furlough's about a year in the future.
Well, go and tell my daughter that I have consented to your union. She and her mother are sitting on pins and needles in the next room.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
One reason Mary had been drawn to the handsome but poor Robert was that he shared her anti-slavery views. He now took a slave, his mother's aged coachman Nat, to his first military post in Georgia, not because he wanted Nat's service, but because the elderly man was ill and needed to be taken care of. As Robert had been a nurse to his mother during his teen years, he now became a nurse to Nat. The work on the Georgia coastal defenses was dreary, but the young officer gained experience that would later prove very useful. The winter of 1830-31, however, was exceptionally cold in Georgia, and in spite of Lee's most tender care, Nat died. In April, Lee was assigned to help rebuild Fort Monroe, and so was transferred to Old Point Comfort, Virginia, closer to home and to Mary Custis.
Lieutenant Lee reporting as ordered, sir.
Ah, yes. Your furlough has been approved, Lieutenant Lee. I understand you're going to be married.
Yes, sir. The wedding will take place in a week. The Lee and Carter clans are already descending on Arlington. I don't know where Mrs. Custis will put them all up.
Well, best of luck, Lieutenant Lee, and congratulations.
And before these assembled guests, and before God, I pronounce you, Robert Edward Lee, and you, Mary Ann Custis, man and wife. You may kiss the bride.
So my younger brother is now an old married man. Congratulations, Robert. You have a lovely bride.
Thank you, Smith. I'm glad you were able to get leave from the Navy to be my best man.
Well, nothing could make me miss it, Robert.
Come, Robert, we must join the reception line.
I'll be right there, my dear.
Orders from the high command already, I see.
Yes, and orders I'll gladly obey, brother.
There goes the groom on the run. Have you ever seen a happier man than Robert Lee at this moment?
Why not? He's just become the heir of Arlington Plantation and a vast fortune.
I don't think that was the principal reason for the marriage, sir.
No, Dot, you are right. Let's join the reception, shall we?
Mary Custis Lee found she was not at all fond of life on a military post, and Robert himself was disgusted at the drunkenness and laziness he saw there. Soon Mary began to spend long months at home in Arlington, especially just before and after the births of their 7 children. Late in 1834, Robert was transferred to Washington, and the young couple lived at Arlington with Mary's parents. Non-combatant engineering was hardly the path to quick promotion. It wasn't until September 1836 that Robert was finally promoted to first lieutenant, and he seriously considered leaving the Army. But in April 1837, he was given an irresistible engineering challenge to change the course of the Father of Waters.
Whoa, horse, whoa!
Daddy, you're home.
Come here, son. Give me your hand. I'll lift you up into the saddle like a real soldier. There. Now we'll ride up to the house and see what your mother has arranged for dinner. Hop, boys!
Why are you home so early, Daddy?
Because I have exciting news for the whole family. We're all going on a long trip, and we'll ride by steamboat and the brand new railroad train.
St. Louis? Gracious, Robert, that is a long way from home. How long will we stay there?
The assignment may take 3 years or more. Silt from the Mississippi is building up and blocking the harbor to the city. My job will be to find a way to remove the buildup of sand and to construct a new dike so that it doesn't happen again.
It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for you, Robert. Oh, my, I'll have so much to do before we go. There's the packing. We'll have to set up a household. I wonder what servants we should take.
11 o'clock. You sent for me, sir?
Yes, Captain Lee. I wanted to tell you how much all of St. Louis appreciates the job you have done. Why, sir, you've saved the city. Your idea of a special dike to sluice the sand and silt away from the harbor was a stroke of genius.
That is a compliment indeed, sir.
Will you stay in the West, Captain Lee?
No, sir. My work in St. Louis is finished. I'm being transferred back east.
Robert had spent nearly 4 years in St. Louis, most of the time without his family. Although forced by lack of funding to discontinue the project before he considered it complete, he had proven his ability and won another promotion. His next assignment took him to Fort Hamilton in New York, where he was too often alone while Mary and the 7 children made long visits to Arlington. After 17 years in the Army, at the age of 39, Lee was still just a captain. But now war was brewing on the Mexican border, and in spite of the opposition of Representative Abraham Lincoln, President Polk pushed for a declaration of war against Mexico and the dictator Santa Anna. General Winfield Scott mobilized United States forces in Texas. When the Mexican War broke out, Robert had reservations about the justice of the United States position. Still, he was eager to show what he could do as a real soldier. His chance came in August 1846.
My orders have come through, Mary Ann. I'm off to Texas next week. For a while, I thought the war with Mexico would end before I got there.
I'll worry about you, Robert. Write often, and please take care of yourself.
Captain Robert E. Lee reporting for duty, sir.
Ah, yes, Lee. I've heard good reports about you. That job on the St. Louis harbor was well done. I've need of a really good engineer, Captain. Are you ready for a very important and perhaps what'll turn out to be a very dangerous assignment?
I am, sir.
Good. Well, to fill you in on some background, President Polk has decided that our major offensive against Santa Anna should not be across the desert south of the Rio Grande, but by an invasion from the sea to the heart of the country.
Which means a direct attack on Mexico City itself.
Mm-hmm.
That seems logical to me, sir.
Yes, it is a good plan. Now, Commodore Perry has a large fleet in the harbor here, ready to ferry us to Veracruz. Your job begins when we get there.
Commodore Perry, General Winfield Scott just came aboard. He would like a word with you.
Please show the General in, Lieutenant. Welcome aboard my flagship, General Scott. It is indeed an honor to speak with America's greatest soldier.
You've much to be honored for yourself, Commodore.
Thank you, sir. Now, what can I do for you?
This is Captain Lee, an engineer on special assignment to me. He has an idea that may win Veracruz for us. Now, tell the Commodore your plan, Captain.
As you know, sir, we have the place completely surrounded, but the ramparts are very strong. What it boils down to, Commodore Perry, is we need your big naval guns.
I'm afraid our guns do not have the range to bombard Veracruz from the harbor.
We know that, sir. That's why we want to, borrow your cannon and take them ashore.
Even if, and that's a big if, we can ferry the heavy guns ashore, Captain, where can you possibly locate them to effectively damage the fort?
Don't worry about that, Commodore Perry. Lee has that plan to my satisfaction. Now give us the cannons, and Lee will do the rest. I don't know how you did it, Lee, but you found an unguarded road up the mountain and the perfect location for our naval ordnance.
The Mexican guns can't reach us up here, sir, but the fort is an easy target for our artillery.
Well, fire away, and we'll see how well this plan of yours will work.
Yes, sir. Batteries 1, 2, and 3, prepare to fire!
Batteries ready, sir.
Fire!
Robert's older brother, Smith, was in charge of one of the naval guns. The engineer corps included Robert's old friend, Joe Johnston, and Lieutenants P.G.T. Beauregard and George B. McClellan. The quartermaster in charge of provisions was 24-year-old Second Lieutenant Ulysses S. Grant, who had earlier expressed the hope that they could fight all at once and then make friends. As shells smashed into the city, the Americans were horrified by the effectiveness of their bombardment. Lee wrote later that his heart bled for the civilians being killed. Within days, Veracruz surrendered. As the weeks passed, the Army advanced across the heart of the country toward Mexico City, taking Cerro Gordo, Jalapa, and Puebla. Finally, they could look down on the capital.
There lies Mexico City in the valley. If ever I've seen an impregnable fort, The citadel of Chapultepec is it.
Mexico City will be difficult to take, General Scott. The lakes and swamps that surround the city, plus the citadel, make any kind of direct attack little more than suicidal.
That's why we need your expertise as a scout and an engineer. Now, you must find a way around the city for a possible flank attack. I'm detaching you for duty with General Percival Smith. Leave now and report to him directly. He's expecting you.
Working with Beauregard, Lee was able to find a network of hidden roads around Mexico City. Under special detail to General Smith, Robert supervised the difficult job of getting the heavy guns into position over the narrow, muddy tracks. But that was the easy part.
We are in great danger of being surrounded, and we need help fast. I must get word to General Scott. Can you do it?
The only way to get through is over the lava fields. I'll have to go on foot, but yes, I think I can make it, General Smith.
It will be a hazardous trip in this rain, so be careful. Go now, Major, and good luck.
Five more miles to go. Ooh! This lava rock is sharp. My feet are cut to pieces. What's that? Uh-oh. A Mexican patrol. And no place to hide.
¡Alto! ¿Quién anda ahí? Es un americano. ¡Disparen! ¡Disparen! ¡Se escapa! ¡Disparen!
Good. I think I lost them. Must keep running. Must get to General Scott.
The Mexicans were able to flank General Smith's detachment and strike at its rear. General Smith's only hope was that Lee had gotten through to Scott and that reinforcements would be on the way. Suddenly, Smith's detachment heard gunfire in the distance.
That's Scott coming up behind the Mexicans. Major Lee got through. We're saved!
The Battle of Contreras was quickly over, but Lee's task was not. He scouted the road to Churubusco and reported it clear. That battle was another victory for Scott's army. And finally, after more than 30 hours of constant activity, Robert E. Lee could sleep. For the battles of Contreras and Churubusco, Robert received the temporary rank of lieutenant colonel. The final battle, the storming of Chapultepec, came on September 13th, and Lee, who had been up this time for 56 hours, was wounded slightly. Although he fainted out of his saddle and lost a lot of blood, he was back on duty the next day. For this action, he received his third temporary rank, full colonel.
Did we lose many men, General?
There were surprisingly few casualties. Santa Anna fled so fast he left his wooden leg behind. It's the truth, my boy. After that, all resistance ceased.
That's fine, General Scott. Now we can all go home.
Colonel Lee, we have the fire engine house surrounded. Now Brown must surrender or die.
How many men are in the engine house with John Brown, Lieutenant Stewart?
Not more than 20, sir. Some of them are his own sons, and there are some black men in there, too.
Well, we have a company of Marines. We should have no trouble flushing them out. Sergeant, give me the megaphone.
I don't think you can talk them out, Colonel Lee.
I must try.
Brown! John Brown! I am Colonel Robert Lee. Throw down your muskets and come out with your hands in the air. We will not surrender. God is on our side. What can you gain, man, except the deaths of all those who are with you? Give up. You will have a fair trial. Never! We will fight to the death for the freedom of our black brothers. You can't win. You have too much against you.
Lieutenant Stewart, prepare to attack.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Story Hour. I'm Aunt Carol.
And I'm Uncle Dan. We're glad you joined us today for part 2 in our exciting series called Robert E. Lee, Hero of the South.
After the Mexican War, Robert E. Lee settled into the dull routine of the peacetime army. He served 3 years as superintendent of West Point and several more years on the Texas-Mexican border fighting Comanches. While on leave at his plantation, Arlington, he was suddenly ordered to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, to help capture the anti-slavery fanatic, John Brown.
First platoon! Battering ram ready!
Ready, sir!
Second and third platoons, on my order! Put down a covering fire! Ready? Fire! Battering ram! Forward on the double! Stop! Stop the shooting! We surrender!
At the trial, Lee testified that Brown was insane and should not be hanged. The death sentence was passed, however, by a judge terrified at the thought of a general slave rebellion. Lee then assisted Brown's wife in getting permission to visit her husband in prison before the hanging. The relationship between the North and the South became more strained each day. In Congress, the Southern Democrats were infuriated by the failure of a bill to allow slavery in all the territories. They threatened secession. The election of 1860, which swept Lincoln and the new Republican Party into office, was the final blow to Southern pride.
Extra, extra, read all about it. South Carolina withdraws from the Union. Other states follow. Jefferson Davis sworn in President of the Confederacy. Extra, extra.
In 1860, discouraged by the system of promotion by favoritism instead of accomplishment, Lee again considered resigning from the Army. Yet he hesitated. In February 1861, when he was ordered to Washington for a conference with his old commander, Winfield Scott, he didn't know if he would go over to the South or remain with the North. He could see some right and some wrong on both sides. On April 18th, 6 days after the bombardment of Fort Sumter and the day after Virginia's secession, he was offered command of the Union Army. Finally, after 32 years of frustration, he had his chance for the greatest possible promotion, and he turned it down. His children were in Virginia, he said, and I cannot raise my hand against my children. Believing Virginia's secession to mean the end of the Union, Lee sadly traveled to Richmond, where the secession committee chose him as commander of Virginia's army. In May, Winfield Scott sent a message to Mary that the Yankees were coming to Arlington. The next morning, the arthritic woman kissed the servants goodbye, climbed painfully into her carriage, and left her childhood home forever. In June, the Virginia State Army was transferred to the Confederate States, and Lee became a commander without a command. But he soon made himself indispensable to Confederate President Jefferson Davis.
Robert E. Lee, I'm proud to have you as my military advisor. Welcome to Richmond and the Confederacy, sir.
My only wish is to protect Virginia, President Davis. If by doing so I can help the South as well, so much the better.
Well, the war goes well so far. We chased the Yanks at Manassas all the way back to Washington. The Washington gentry rode out in carriages to watch us get beat, even carried picnic baskets. Well, we showed them a thing or two.
Yes, the South has had victories, but none of them has been decisive.
Give us time, General Lee, just give us time.
President Davis's elation was to be short-lived. West Virginia had seceded from Virginia and gone over to the Union, and the Union Army was advancing south. In May 1862, Lee's wife and 2 of their daughters were trapped in territory held by the Union forces. but they were given safe conduct to Confederate lines by General George B. McClellan, who now held the very post that Lee had refused. By June, Richmond was in a state of anxiety. McClellan, with an army of more than 100,000 men, was at the very outskirts of the city, and the Confederate cabinet had fled.
I'm worried about the safety of Richmond, General Lee. We are virtually surrounded by 2 Federal armies, one in Virginia Valley, another at Fredericksburg. General McClellan has the Army of the Potomac camped just a few miles from the city. They seem unbeatable.
They can be beaten, Mr. President.
Well, I hope you have a good plan, sir, because you are now commander of all Confederate forces in this sector.
General Jackson, General Stuart, please sit down. I want to go over a plan with you to save Richmond.
His name is Audacity, said one who knew him well, and Lee indeed had an audacious plan. First, he sent Thomas Jackson to raid the Shenandoah Valley and appear to threaten Washington. Just as Lee hoped, President Lincoln quickly recalled the reinforcements which had started out to join McClellan. Next, Jeb Stuart took his cavalry on a scouting expedition to the rear of McClellan's forces. In the meantime, Lee forced reluctant troops to dig defenses, earning the bitter nickname King of Spades from soldiers who thought it a disgrace to work with shovels instead of guns. Then once again, Lee called a council of war.
Jeb Stuart, I'm glad you've returned. What information do you have for me about McClellan's troop movements?
My horse soldiers rode clear around the Union Army, General Lee, without McClellan ever knowing we were there. Here is how it looks to me.
The information that Stuart brought Lee that day was the edge he needed. In a furious week of fighting, known as the 7 Days Battle, Lee had to contend with delays, poor communication lines, and the insubordination of some of his officers. But on July 1st, McClellan pulled back to the James River, and the South had found a new hero. Incredibly, soldiers who had been trying to slaughter each other for a week got together between their picket lines a few days later and held a joint 4th of July celebration. McClellan's poor performance, however, led to changes in the Union Army.
Please, sit down, Mr. Stanton.
Oh, all right. I'll get right to the point, Mr. Lincoln. I think we should replace McClellan. He was right at the gate of Richmond, and he failed to attack. Why, sir, we could have won the war right then.
I have replaced him with General Buell.
Buell is a good man, but he can't command a whole army.
Well, whom do you suggest? How about Grant?
Not that cigar-puffing drunken fool. No, definitely not Grant.
Then who? Halleck with Pope as second in command?
Maybe that would work. Just maybe.
Under Pope, the nature of the war changed. For the first time, civilians and their property were considered fair game, and Lee protested furiously to Halleck. McClellan had continued to hang around within a few miles of Richmond, but in August it became clear that he was hurrying north to join Pope. Lee had to stop Pope before the two armies could join up, but the first effort was a disaster.
Sir, I was told to report to you as quick as I could.
Jasper, you are the best dispatch rider we have. This message must get to General Jackson not later than tomorrow night. He is camped at the narrows of the Shenandoah River. Can you do it?
Yes, sir. I'll get me a fresh mount and leave immediately.
Hark! Be quiet, you men. I hear something. Listen.
You've got a good ear, Sarge. That's a horse galloping this way. Coming fast, too.
This is rebel country, so douse that fire and be still until we see who it is.
That looks like a Reb dispatch rider.
You're right, Private. Hand me that carbine. We'd best find out what he's carrying.
After reading the intercepted message, General Pope drew the conclusion that Lee was trying to outflank him by swinging his army between him and Washington. Alarmed, Pope decided to withdraw from the valley and regroup his forces near Manassas, across from Bull Run Creek. But Jackson had received new orders from Lee to cut Pope's supply line at Cedar Mountain.
General Lee, a message from General Jackson.
Thank you, Private. Go get some food and rest, then come back for a possible return message. Gentlemen, hear this. Have entrenched my foot cavalry across Union supply line. Have captured 300 men, 8 cannon, and shot. 175 horses and 50,000 pounds of beef and other stores, awaiting orders. Signed, Thomas Jackson, General CSA.
Lee and Longstreet set out to join Jackson, and on August 29th, the Second Battle of Manassas, or Bull Run, began. Longstreet seemed unwilling to fight, persuading Lee 3 times to let him delay attacking. But hungry, barefoot soldiers fought fiercely, and Thomas Jackson inspired his troops by standing like a stone wall against brutal Union attacks. By the end of the second day, the Union forces were in full flight. This was one of Lee's greatest victories, but because of his men's hunger and exhaustion, he couldn't follow up the advantage. 5 days later, the gaunt, ragged army of Northern Virginia crossed the Potomac River into Maryland. Expecting the people to be sympathetic to the Southern cause, Lee was surprised and hurt by their indifference.
General Jackson, the food supplies you captured are almost gone. But the people of Maryland will not give us any help. They are sullen and unfriendly.
We can take what we want.
I don't want to do that. Maryland may be reluctant to give us supplies, but they haven't joined with the Union either.
What will you do?
I'm not sure, Thomas. I think I'll ride out into the countryside and do a little thinking.
Don't go alone. There are still Yankee patrols in the area. Take someone with you.
Don't worry.
Suddenly, General Lee's horse, Traveler, reared up, and as the general lunged forward to grab the reins, he fell, breaking his fall with his hands.
Oh, no. It looks like both his wrists are broken, as well as a possible concussion.
Oh. Where is that ambulance? It should have been here by now.
Just lie still, General Lee. An ambulance is on the way.
Here comes that ambulance. About time, too.
In his fall, General Lee had broken one hand and sprained both. Since he couldn't hold the reins to guide his horse now, he had to ride in the ambulance until his hands healed.
Captain, will you come into my tent, please?
General Lee, you shouldn't be out of bed so quickly.
I've held the army up for 2 days now, and that's long enough. There is a war to be fought, so let's be about it.
What are your orders, sir?
Ride over to General Jackson's bivouac area and ask him to come to my tent as soon as possible.
The army is in bad shape, General Lee. We are getting low on food, and many of our troops are without decent footwear or clothing. Something needs to be done, and fast.
That's why I sent for you, General Jackson. We expected the people of Maryland to be sympathetic to our cause, but at best they've been lukewarm. We can't depend on them for food or supplies.
True enough, but what is the answer to our problem?
Harper's Ferry. There is a large federal supply base located there with tons of powder, shot, rifles, food, and shoes.
Shoes? What a blessing that would be, Robert. Why, half my foot cavalry is marching with their toes sticking out of their boots, and some have no footwear at all.
You can start for Harper's Ferry as soon as possible, Thomas.
Is that why, sir? You have already sent Longstreet to Hagerstown and split Harvey Hill's outfit to guard the South Mountain passes.
I realize our forces are spread thin, but our old adversary, McClellan, is back in command of the Union Army, and he has just 2 speeds, slow and slower. With luck, you will have vanquished the Federals at Harper's Ferry and rejoined our main army before he decides to move.
But McClellan fell into a bit of luck. While poking around in an abandoned rebel camp, one of his officers found, wrapped around 3 cigars, Special Order 191. This document detailed all of Lee's plans for the march through Maryland.
General McClellan, do you think this special order is genuine?
Yes, gentlemen, I believe this document is real. It spells out in detail all of Lee's march routes and eventual targets. I think we have the gray fox at last.
Had McClellan responded quickly, he could have fragmented Lee's army into small, easily defeated pieces, but he moved with characteristic slowness. Lee, on the other hand, had to deal with quarreling generals. Longstreet arrested Hood, and Jackson arrested A.P. Hill. But Lee, who had too few commanders to start with, intervened and kept both Hood and Hill in their commands, at least for the time being. In the meantime, General D.H. Hill watched from Turner's Gap on South Mountain as McClellan slowly advanced with the Army of the Potomac.
Look down there, Major. Hundreds of Yankee campfires. McClellan is going to try to cross the mountains and attack General Lee from behind. Where did he get his information?
I don't know, General Hill, but he seems to know every move we make before we make it. There must be an army of at least 5 divisions down there. Can you hold them, sir?
With the help of Stuart's horse artillery, perhaps a day at most. I want you to send a courier to General Lee. Tell him our situation up here.
General Hood, I want you to march your Texas Brigade to support General Hill at Turner's Gap on South Mountain.
Yes, sir, but won't that leave you a little thin down here?
Yes, it will. But I'm hoping that Jackson will be successful at Harper's Ferry and can join us at Sharpsburg in a few days.
Will you take the army across the Potomac, General Lee?
I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll see.
General Jackson, the Yanks are flying a white flag. We've taken Harper's Ferry, sir.
Not a moment too soon, Major. General Lee needs us at Sharpsburg.
General Hill, you did a fine piece of fighting on South Mountain. Your brigade gained us some time.
Thank you, General Lee. What are your plans, sir?
We will cross Antietam Creek and put it between us and McClellan. Then we will wait.
The Union Army is 3 times the size of ours, sir. Would it not be better to ford the Potomac and fight in the Virginia Valley?
I just got word from Jackson. He beat the Federals at Harper's Ferry and is hurrying north to join us.
That will help. But will Jackson get here in time?
I think so, General Hill. If I know McClellan, he'll waste a day or 2 in making plans.
Lee was right. McClellan moved with agonizing slowness, giving Lee time to position his forces on a north to south line before Sharpsburg, on the slopes between Antietam Creek and the Potomac. It was a position strong in natural defenses, but militarily weak. Lee watched and waited for Jackson and the other half of the army as slowly the Union Army massed their forces on the eastern side of the little stream. The bloodiest battle of the Civil War was about to commence.
I can't handle my field glasses with these bandaged hands. Captain James, you will have to be my eyes. Here, take my glasses.
Sir, it appears like the Federal troops are gathering across the Antietam. There's no evidence they plan to attack immediately.
Good. McClellan is taking his time, as usual. That will give Jackson a chance to reach us and give us a chance to strengthen our flanks.
By noon on September 16th, Jackson's army had arrived, and Lee stationed him to his left or north on the Hagerstown Road. Jackson had left A.P. Hill with a division to secure Harper's Ferry. 30,000 Confederates faced 88,000 Federal troops across the creek. During the night, a drizzle of rain dampened the waiting armies.
General Lee, can't you sleep?
No, I'm a little restless. I'm sorry I woke you, Captain James.
You didn't, sir. I can't sleep either. Will the attack come in the morning?
Yes, it will. Our scouts report that Hooker and Mansfield are massing on our left, while Burnside's troops are ready to cross the Stone Bridge on our right.
Who will advance from the center, sir? I should think the cornfields would make excellent cover for a counterattack.
I'm told that Sumner is in the center with a strong force. Well, the sky is beginning to lighten. Have my orderly saddle Traveler and bring him here. It's time to do battle, Captain James.
General Jackson, the Yanks are breaking into our lines. Thousands of bluebellies are pushing us back. We can't hold them.
What of McClaw's division, Colonel? Are they holding our flank?
No, sir. They're being pushed back, too.
Fall back to Duncan's church. At all costs, we must protect our artillery there.
3 separate battles raged that day. The morning saw attack and counterattack through Eastwood, Westwood, and the cornfields heavy with ripened grain. During the middle of the day, the fighting shifted to the center of the line and across a sunken road which became known as Bloody Lane. The third battle took place in the afternoon, south of the town. From the diary of Sergeant John Graham, 27th North Carolina,
September 17, 1862. Forming in the cornfields, we advanced under heavy fire. Canister and grape shot mowed into our lines as we were ordered to advance quick step. We halted at a rail fence to form up our lines, but Federal musket fire cut us down. Enemy dead were piled 2 and 3 deep, and our own men fell across them in grotesque positions of death. Colonel Cook ordered us to fall back.
The 27th North Carolina entered the battle with 325 officers and men and came out with only 120. All day, the lines of battle flowed back and forth across the Antietam. At the Stone Bridge, General Burnside was getting ready to make his 5th attempt to cross the narrow creek.
General Burnside, the Rebs are pulling back from the bridge. They're taking a position on the ridge about 100 yards away.
Yeah, it's a good position. We can't flush them out with our field pieces, but they can rake us with grape shot and musket fire. Who's in command over there?
An officer named Toombs, sir.
Well, he's a good soldier, even if he is a rebel. Prepare your men, Colonel. We'll try one more charge.
General Lee, I've just received a report. The Stone Bridge has been taken. The Union forces are pouring over the creek in great numbers.
Longstreet is on the right side. He should be able to contain Burnside's corps.
Sir! Sir, the Yanks have broken through the center.
Calm down, soldier. Now tell me what happened.
A regiment of General Gordon's men were in a sunken ditch facing the cornfields. Oh, God.
Go on, boy.
The Bluebellies flanked the ditch on both sides and poured musket fire into our boys. They're all dead, sir. All dead in that bloody ditch.
Their ammunition almost gone, it looked like the exhausted Confederates would be wiped out. Just then, General A.P. Hill arrived with 3,000 men who'd covered the 17 miles from Harper's Ferry at a near run. With a blood-curdling rebel yell, they threw themselves into the fray, panicking the battle-weary Union troops who broke and ran. The Army of Virginia was saved.
What will you do now, Robert?
Listen to me, General Jackson, and all of you officers. If McClellan wants to continue this fight, I will give him battle again.
I think McClellan has had his belly full, General Lee. Do you feel that now we should retire across the Potomac?
How many good men lost on both sides? 14,000 for us. That many or more for the enemy. We have just walked through hell, gentlemen, and all who survived are heroes.
The next day, the battered, bloody armies looked at each other across the scarred battlefield. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, it was clear that McClellan was not willing to renew the attack. Under cover of darkness on the night of September 18th, the remnant of the Southern Army retreated across the Potomac. Lee sat on his horse in the middle of the river, supervising the crossing. Only when the last division had safely passed by did he turn and ride southward himself. The Maryland invasion was over.
Hello there, everyone.
Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to another Story Hour session.
Well, folks, it's Aunt Sue's turn to bring us another story today. And I happen to know it's a most unusual one. Right, Aunt Sue?
Right, Uncle Dan. I think our listeners will really enjoy it. And I'll simply call it Nip and Tuck. This story actually happened back in the days when such things could and did happen. The hero of this story is a little boy with a heart full of smiles and a face full of freckles.
Daddy,
Yes, son?
is my real name Freckles?
No, son. Tommy's your real name.
The boys at school make fun of my freckles and call me an orphan. But I'm not, am I, Dad?
Nope. You still have me. And as long as you have me, you're not an orphan.
I wish I still had my mother.
So do I, son.
What did she look like, Daddy?
She was a wonderful and beautiful woman, son. I've missed her terribly. And I've tried, son, to be both a mother and father to you. Perhaps I've failed, but I hope not. Perhaps I should have gotten...
Freckles' father did odd jobs around the town. Usually, Freckles had to stay home and amuse himself while his father was working. But one day, his father took Freckles along.
Oh, Daddy, look at the houses. They have green grass. All of them. Why don't we have green grass on our lawn?
Because we live in the slums.
Look at the trees and flowers. And there's a swing fastened up in the tree. Oh, Daddy, why can't we live in a pretty place like this?
We will, someday,
We will? When?
when we get to heaven. Right now, we're too poor to afford a home like these.
Will Jesus let me play on the lawn and swing in a swing and do things like that?
Son, well, when we get home, I'm going to sit down and tell you all about heaven.
Oh, will you, Daddy?
Yes, son, I'll tell you all about Jesus and our home in heaven and the fun we'll have there. Everything. Now, son, I'll tell you about heaven, if you're not too sleepy.
Oh, I'm not sleepy at all. Please tell me.
Well, son, first of all, we're going to have a city home, a mansion in the New Jerusalem. That's the home that Jesus went to prepare for all those that love him and are faithful to him.
Will it have pretty green grass and a swing?
The Bible doesn't tell us exactly what that city home will be like, except to say that it is beautiful, far beyond the imagination of man.
Will Jesus live in that city?
Yes, Jesus will make it his home and have his throne there.
Can I visit with Jesus?
Oh, yes, any time you want to. Why, we'll have a country home, too. We'll build it ourselves, and it'll be exactly like we want it.
Can I have a pony there in my country home?
Yes, you can have a pony.
Can I have a dog, too?
A dog, a pony, a swing, and many other wonderful things.
When can I go to heaven, Daddy?
Well, son, that is the problem. Getting to heaven. Everyone wants to go there and enjoy all the wonderful things, but, well, so few are willing to pay the price of a ticket.
I will, Daddy, if it doesn't cost too much. I'll sell newspapers and get the money.
You're too young to sell papers, son. Anyway, it doesn't cost any money to get a ticket to heaven. Just give Jesus your heart. Always be honest and do what's right, and you will someday get to that beautiful home. That, my son, is the price of a ticket to heaven. But it's too high for some people. They simply will not give up their evil and selfish habits.
One evening, Father came home from work very, very tired.
Supper's ready, Daddy.
I've got to rest a while first, son. I'm tired out. Whew. I'll lie down here on the couch.
Daddy, are you sick?
Oh, I don't think so, son. Just tired.
Your face is awful white.
Well, maybe I have a little fever.
Should I go get a doctor?
Oh, no, son.
I'm not that sick.
Shall I get Mrs. Kenton?
No, son. She's too busy taking care of her 10 children.
She's nice, Daddy.
Well, all right. If it'll make you feel better. What is it, Mrs. Kenton?
Sakes, you have a high temperature, Mr. Thomas, over 102.
Oh.
Is that bad, Mrs. Kenton?
Well, pretty bad, I'd say, Freckles. You'd better get a doctor.
No.
All right, suit yourself.
Is Daddy gonna die?
No, of course I'm not going to die.
Don't think your father'll die, Freckles, not if you can persuade him to stay in bed and rest. I think that's all he needs.
Good morning, Daddy.
Hi, son.
How do you feel, Daddy?
Not very good.
Your face is whiter than it was last night. Should I go get Mrs. Kenton again?
Perhaps you had better, son.
Land sakes, 104 8/10. That's awfully high temperature, Mr. Thomas. You must be burning up inside.
Son, I want you to step outside for a few minutes. I want to talk to Mrs. Kenton privately.
Okay, Daddy.
I'm worried about Freckles, Mrs. Kenton.
Oh, land sakes, Freckles is all right, Mr. Thomas.
I don't mean that. I mean, well, I've known for a long time that someday this would happen, and I'd be taken away.
You're not going to get well?
Well, it's been coming on for years.
Oh.
I'm worried about Freckles, Mrs. Kenton. When I go, would you take Freckles and as one of your own?
Well, Freckles is a good boy, Mr. Thomas, but we're too poor. Fred doesn't have a job now, and we can scarcely feed our own children.
Well, it won't be long until Freckles will be big enough to be of help, and...
Well, I can't promise, Mr. Thomas, but if we can, we will.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Kenton. And now, please ask Freckles to come in. I want to talk to him. Sit down, son. Here, beside of me. You're a good son.
You're awful sick, aren't you, Daddy?
Oh, everything's going to be all right now. You just listen to me and do as I tell you.
Okay, Daddy.
Now, someday I'll have to leave you, son. Whether it's tomorrow or 20 years from now, makes no difference. God will be with you and near you always. He will care for you and protect you. Just remember, son, to talk to Jesus often. Tell him exactly what you need. He will answer you. Be honest in your requests to Jesus. Honest in what you do and say and how you act. And never take anything that doesn't belong to you.
I won't, Daddy. I won't.
I've told you all about heaven. And someday, you and Mother and I will meet in that beautiful home. Yes. Be a good boy, won't you, son?
I will, Daddy. I promise.
And with those words, Freckles' father fell asleep. Before morning, he grew worse, and 4 days later, he was laid to rest. The world looked dark indeed to little Freckles. Land sakes, Freckles, I wish we could take you in our home, but we simply can't.
I'm going to stay right here, Mrs. Kenton. This is home, and I'm going to keep on living here.
But how are you going to get food?
I'm going to sell newspapers.
I guess that's about the only thing you can do.
Goodbye, Mrs. Kenton.
Goodbye. Well, sakes, are you going somewhere?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, where, Freckles?
Just somewhere.
Well, what's in that little bundle you're carrying?
My clothes and things.
You mean you're going away for good? Moving away?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think you'd better stay where you are, Freckles.
I can't. The man who owns the house said I couldn't unless I pay him rent. And I can't do that.
Why, that heartless old critter chasing a little boy out for the lack of a little rent.
He's a nice man, Mrs. Kenton.
Nice? Well, I'd say he's a selfish old skinflint. It should be reported. They should do something about the likes of him.
Goodbye, Mrs. Kenton.
Freckles, why don't you go to the orphanage?
Oh, no, not me. I wouldn't like to live there.
Well, land sakes, it's better than nothing.
I can take care of myself, and Jesus will help me. Goodbye, Mrs. Kenton. There's a place between two buildings. Maybe I can stay there. Oh, no, it's too small. I couldn't even lay down. Oh, here's another opening between two walls. Just big enough. Right here in this corner. If I can find some rags for a bed, this will be a nice place to sleep. And here's a good little place to hide my things, too. All I have to do now is to find some rags. Then I'll have to get some newspapers to sell.
So you want to sell newspapers, huh?
Yeah, what do I have to do first?
First, you gotta find a corner. That's a hard thing to do.
Can I sell newspapers on any corner?
You try it and you'll have a fight on your hands.
What corner can I sell papers on then?
Well, kid, you better go back to your mother and father. You're too small to sell papers anyway.
I don't have a mother and father.
You don't, huh? How come?
They're dead.
Both of them?
Yeah, Daddy just died.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I got two corners. One of them ain't no good anyway. I'll let you sell papers on it.
Oh, thank you.
Be here early in the morning and I'll take you with me and show you how to get papers to sell. Now you go ahead and try it.
Get your daily paper here. Read all about the holdup.
Nah, that's not the way. Here, like this. Get your morning paper here. Read all about the big holdup. Get the idea?
Yeah, I'll try it again.
I'll take one.
Yes, sir. Here, sir. 3 cents, sir.
Here's a nickel. Keep the change.
Thank you, sir.
I gotta go now, kid. You'll get along all right. So long.
So long, and thanks. Get your morning paper here. Read all about the great train robbery. Right here. Only 3 cents. Get your morning paper here.
The days were long and lonely for Freckles, but he managed to sell enough papers to buy himself the necessary food. Then one day, something unusual happened.
Get your evening paper here. Only 3 cents. Get your paper here. No one's buying papers tonight. I wonder why. Read all about the big fight. Only 3 cents. Get your paper here. A dog. Well, hello there, doggy. What's your name? No, I can't pet you. I gotta sell all these papers. You go on home. Get your evening paper
Evening,
here.
Freckles.
Oh, hello, sir. Here's your paper.
And here's your nickel. What's that you got there?
Where, sir? Oh, him? He's not mine, sir.
Well, looks like he likes you.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he?
Night, Freckles. See you in the morning.
Yes, sir. You better go on home like I told you to. Maybe you don't have a home. I don't have a home either. You just sit down there until I sell these papers. Then we'll see what we can do. Sit down. Sit down. Say, you mind pretty well. Get your evening paper here. Only 3 cents. All right, come on. Let's go home. Well, it's not really a home. Just a place between 2 walls where I sleep and eat. It's not very much, but maybe you'll like it. You've got to have a name. So what will I call you? Nippy, that's your name. Okay, Nip?
Nip and Freckles became fast friends and were seen together day after day. Freckles shared his meager meals with Nip, who helped to keep him warm at night. One day, when Freckles was selling papers, a well-dressed lady drove up in a handsome carriage and stepped out and entered a store. Soon she came out and got back in her carriage and drove off.
Look at that pretty lady, Nip. Oh, she dropped her purse. I better get it. I bet there's a lot of money in here, Nip. Think of all the food we could buy with this, Nip. But that would be stealing. I saw the lady drop it. I've got to give this back to her, Nip. Lady! 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 Lady!
Oh, Henry, stop the horses.
Oh! Oh!
What did you want, boy?
He dropped this.
My purse.
He dropped it back there.
Oh, well, thank you, boy. Here's a tip.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Henry, let's go home.
Yes, ma'am. Get up here. Come on, get up.
A whole dime. I can get Nip and me something special tonight.
That night, in his cubbyhole corner, Freckles, as he always did, prayed and thanked God for all the blessings of life.
And thank you, dear God, for helping me to be honest. And please, dear God, help me to always be honest. I want to go to the beautiful home Daddy told me about. My daddy will be there, and my mother, too. And I want to see him. We get awful lonesome, me and Nip. Get your evening paper here. Only 3 cents. Read all the news in the Evening Herald. Only 3 cents. Nip, there's that lady, the one that dropped the purse. My, those horses are pretty. Hey, she's motioning to us. Wonder what she wants.
Boy, will you come here a minute, please?
Yes, ma'am. You stay here, Nip. Hello, ma'am.
I see you sell newspapers.
Yes, ma'am. Want one?
How many do you have there?
8, ma'am.
I'll take all of them. Here's $1.
But they're only 3 cents apiece. That's only 24 cents for all of them.
You can keep the change.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Now Nip and me can have something special for supper.
Nip? Who's Nip?
My partner.
You have a partner?
Yes, ma'am, a dog. His name is Nip.
Oh.
I got a new name for myself, too. Tuck. Nip and Tuck, that's us.
What's your real name, son?
Freckles, ma'am.
That's your nickname. But what's your real name?
Tommy. Tommy Thomas.
Well, Tommy, would you like to go riding?
Ride? Oh, yes, ma'am, I would.
Well, get in then.
But I can't, ma'am.
You can't? Why?
I never go off and leave my partner alone.
Oh, well, bring your partner along.
Nip can go, too?
Yes, Nip can go.
Nip, Nip, come here, Nip.
Well, hello, Nip. All right, Henry, drive through the park and along the river.
Yes, ma'am. Get up here, boy. Come on, White.
Get your Get your evening Herald. Nip, look. Here comes that nice lady again. I wonder if she's going to take us riding again. She's probably forgotten us. It's been so long since she took us riding. She sure is a nice lady. I bet she's as nice as my mother was.
Freckles, do you and Nip want to go for a ride again?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Well, come on then. How many papers do you have left tonight, Freckles?
Only 2, ma'am.
Take them, Henry, and put them under the front seat.
Yes, ma'am.
And here's $1, Freckles.
$1 for only 2 papers? If you keep on buying papers like this, me and Nip will get rich.
You are rich, Freckles. Rich in the things that so many of us are poverty-stricken in.
I am?
You certainly are, dear. Many of the rest of us are destitute. Oh, we have money, but the things you have are heaven-given.
Heaven? Someday I'm going there. My daddy said so.
Your father was right, son.
Madam, where to?
Home, Henry.
Yes, madam. Get up there, boys. Come on.
Nip and Tuck settled back in the plush carriage as Henry drove off. Soon they were out of the business district and into a beautiful residential section. Finally, they drove up a hill. When they reached the top, they turned into a long, winding driveway.
Ooh, this is a beautiful place.
You like it, Freckles?
It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
I'm glad you like it, Freckles. Henry, stop here. I want to show Freckles around.
Yes, madam. Whoa! Whoa!
Thank you, Henry, for the ride.
Well, you're welcome, Freckles. Get up there, boys. Get up.
Look, Nip, up there in that tree. A great big swing. I bet it swings back and forth a long ways. And there's a pony, a black and white one. And look at all the flowers. Ma'am, is this heaven?
Heaven? Why, no, Freckles. This is not heaven.
It must be. It's exactly like Daddy said it would be.
Well, I do hope that this will be a little corner of heaven here on earth for you and Nip and me.
Then this is heaven.
You see, Freckles, you will not have to go back to your little cubbyhole ever again. I've adopted you. And now, you're my little boy. I'll do my best to make this a little heaven for you until Jesus comes and takes us all to his heaven.
You talk just like my daddy did. How did you know I've been praying for a home?
I just knew, Freckles.
How?
Well, God told me in his holy Bible. He said, "The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. The Lord heareth and delivereth them out of all their troubles." You see, Freckles, God heard your prayers, and because you were honest and truthful, I was impressed to bring you home and adopt you as my very own little boy.
This must be heaven, and you must be an angel.